good evening, everyone. Can everyone hear me okay? Don't need a microphone?
Nope.
I've been told that. So welcome to the Nebraska Firearms Owners Association Town Hall. Proud to be here. I'm here with my cohort in crime, John Anderson. My name is Patricia Harold. I'm going to go ahead and let John introduce himself and let him share a little bit about him and his activities with NFOA.
It's a shorter list, that's
Sure,
why.
yeah.
Yeah, my name is John Anderson. I am currently Director of Media for the organization. I have been on the board for, let's see, this is April, so 5 months now. Term just started in December, and I'm brand new on the board. My background, I came from rural Kippahaw County. For those of you that don't know where that is, go to Bassett or Ainsworth and go north. If you hit South Dakota, you went too far. So that's where I came from. I grew up shooting, hunting my whole life as far as that kind of thing goes, but I never was really much into Second Amendment advocacy, preserving rights, things like that, just until recently. Once I became a concealed carrier, my eyes were open to a whole lot more. I started to look and notice what was happening to our rights as Americans. And frankly, it made me mad. And I just decided that I wasn't going to sit idly by and let everybody else make those decisions for me and then complain about it. So the first question that I want to ask the group is, how many of you, show of hands, how many of you think that as far as the rights go for firearm owners, both in the state of Nebraska and in the United States, how many of you think that the rights of firearm owners are seriously hindered, seriously restricted? Okay, me too. How many of you think somebody should do something about that? How many of you know who that somebody is? Right there. Take those fingers and point them right here. You are the gun lobby. You are the ones to make things happen. We've seen that recently, and we're going to show you what I mean by that here in a little bit. But when it comes down to it, I can't wait for one of you to decide to get off your butt and do something while I'm sitting on mine. And my new favorite expression, and this is something that actually people who work out in gyms have been saying this for years. I found this out. Clearly you can tell I'm not one of those guys, so I'm new to this saying. But it goes like this. It says, do not be upset with the results you didn't get from the work you didn't put in. So I'm done being upset with those results. I'm gonna put in the work. That's why I'm here. Nebraska Firearms Owners Association is such an amazing organization. Those of you who are members, you know this. Those of you who are new, and hopefully will be members before the end of the day or before the end of the week, it's free. There are no membership dues, there are no fees. Membership is free for life. Those of us who are on the board, those of us who do things on behalf of NFOA, that's what we get paid out of, is those membership dues. That's all we make to do this. Yeah, it's free. We're not getting paid, okay? This is the true meaning of what grassroots means. It's a bunch of people who got sick and tired of waiting for somebody else to do the work, decided to get together and get it done. NFOA was formed and the result of the effort to get concealed carry passed back in 2006. And our original founder made sure it was in the bylaws that we would never charge to be part of the organization. If you don't live in Nebraska, you can still be an honorary member. We don't exclude anybody. You just don't get the voting rights. You don't get to vote for those of us on the board unless you live here. But that's my background in a nutshell. And I'm going to turn it over to our president, Trish Harold, and she's going to tell you a little bit more about her story. She's been involved a few more years than I have with the organization.
Hi everybody, my name is Trish Harold. I'm not a lifelong gun owner. I decided that shortly after the passing of my husband, about 2 weeks after he passed, I had a small incident in the home that made me realize that I needed to be my first responder and my own personal self-protector. I had 2 young children, and while I had firearms in the military when I served. I wasn't, pro or con. I was fairly neutral. That began my journey. Got connected to several different people in the area that I lived, some of whom were NFOA members. And they took me under their wing, and very shortly thereafter I got involved. Literally, I'd been a member for about 4 months before I ran for the board of directors. That was in 2014. I served 2 years as secretary, and the remaining years so far I've been acting in the position of president. My purpose being here today is to make connections, right? So Nebraska Firearm Owners is an association that's statewide, but we're sadly primarily centralized in the Lincoln and Omaha area, just simply because of the members who have served on the board in the past have been primarily from those areas. So I'm really excited to basically make this our first inaugural. We're heading out into the rest of Nebraska to make connections, to educate, to empower you as citizens the same way we've empowered ourselves with education and training and how to make a difference, how to hold our elected officials accountable, how to make our voices heard, how to hold their feet to the fire when they give an oath of office and then fail to follow that oath, right? We've heard many times people running for office, I'm pro-Second Amendment, I'm pro-Second Amendment. They get into office and then we discover there's a comma, but at the end of that declaration. And that comma, but is where they start talking about illogical and often ridiculous pieces of legislation to basically infringe our rights in an attempt to say we're doing something about violent crime or we're doing something about illegal activities conducted with a firearm. And when you look at it from a logical perspective, none of those laws that have been passed have made a difference. Do you know how many laws we have at the federal, state, and local level with regards to firearms?
Too many.
Too many?
Yeah, way too many.
Over 22,000. Over 22,000 laws at the federal, state, and local level, okay? They're obviously working really well, right? We can talk about the problem with our current procedures with regards to how the law is used, but we don't hold people accountable when they take a tool that we use and we hold in value for ourselves from personal protection, hunting, all the traditional reasons why we have a firearm, and they misuse it. They're not the ones facing the time in jail, right? We have folks who are purchasing firearms illegally. Those firearms are being used for criminal activity up into including the murder of an Omaha police officer, Officer Roscoe, just a few years ago. The woman who did the straw purchase for that firearm, do you want to know how much time she got in jail? She got none. She got 6 months probation, okay, for a felony, okay? So from my perspective as a law-abiding and responsible firearm owner, I'm sick and tired of being made the villain. We're not the ones committing crimes. We're not the ones misusing this tool, but we're the ones constantly held accountable. And as if we can reduce the number of crimes by reducing or really just making it harder for us to get the guns that we want, right? How many of you have more than one? Yeah, I thought I was going to have one. Yeah, 4 safes later, I need to build a house, okay? Because it's a wonderful, wonderful activity to be involved in. I now teach concealed carry. I instruct all over the Midwest, and it's definitely become part of my life. The Nebraska Firearm Owners is, again, a grassroots, volunteer-based, no one's paid organization that simply works to be the voice of Nebraska firearm owners. And the only way we can be your voice is if you tell us what you want us to say. So for instance, myself and others are actually registered lobbyists, right? They always talk about lobbyists with a bad taste in their mouth. But the majority of lobbyists are just people like me who fill out a piece of paperwork to say, I'm going to represent a group of people with a specific interest. And I'll spend time at the unicameral and I testify on behalf of the Nebraska Firearm Owners, and I testify against bad bills as well. What makes it powerful when I go down there to speak is it's not just me, Trish, from Eastern Nebraska. It's Trish, the president of a group of people with almost over 10,000 members and 25,000 followers in the state, right? So when I take your voices, my voice is magnified, right? I have an impact, okay? Let's go to the next slide. So again, we're grassroots, all volunteer, no paid positions, membership is free, and our voices are magnified when we speak as one. So what do? I mentioned lobbying. So we have a team of folks who are volunteers who sign up. It's a one-page form that says, I'm going to lobby on behalf of NFOA. And they take time off of work to educate themselves on all the bills every session to find out what's a good bill, what's a bad bill, and what's our strategy for combating those bills. And they'll go down and spend time talking to senators, doing a whole lot of education. There is a lot of educational opportunities within our elected officials who are clueless about firearms legislation. Bless their heart. So, what do we do?
Some of them don't want educated.
Correct. But we'll actually advise on language in bills. We spend a lot of time testifying. And the biggest thing that we've been spending a lot of time in the last few years are calls to action. So it's not just my team of 5 to 7 lobbyists and a handful of volunteers who are going to show up at a hearing. It is activating citizens to swarm the unicameral with voicemails, phone calls, emails, letters, and actually even showing up in their senators' offices to say, no, we're going to stop this red flag law. No, we're not going to let you pass this assault weapons ban. No, putting this flash suppressor on the end of my AR does not make it more deadly. No, no, no. And we've been exceptionally successful in stopping the bad bills. What has been most frustrating, though, is we can't get one good bill passed. Literally, there is a funnel with a dam at the unicameral. And it has to do with some of the composition of the committees that hear our bills, as well as those folks who say they're pro-2A but actually aren't. So we spend a lot of time educating citizens. We're working on community partnerships, right? So the Nebraska Firearms Owners Association is not a Republican organization. It's not a Democratic organization. It's not a male organization. It's not a female organization. It's just a citizens organization, okay? All we care about as far as our organization is concerned is the Second Amendment and how that is an inalienable right and that it's to be constitutionally protected, and no one has granted it to us. It's innate to each of us as human beings. And so we work with different organizations that may have people who feel the same way about the Second Amendment, and we'll partner with them. And our goal is to expand the 2A community within Nebraska. Not the gun owners per se, but active gun owners, okay? We have thousands of hunters, thousands of folks spending thousands of dollars at wonderful big banquets, hoping to win their next gun to go quail or duck hunting. And you ask them about what they're doing to protect the Second Amendment, and they're like, well, we don't need to. We're Nebraska. Well, we are 40th in the United States as far as firearms freedom, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Right? So why does this matter? The unicameral, the nonpartisan single House of Senators. Really effective, right? We just got tax relief passed, right? No, we didn't. No, we didn't. We can't get anything passed at the state capitol. So the unicameral is supposed to be nonpartisan, but it's exceptionally partisan, okay? So libertarians, Democrats, and Republicans all basically joined forces to stop each other from getting any work done. The ballots for committees. So in order for a bill to be passed, right, it gets written by a senator, it gets checked out to make sure it's constitutional, and then it gets assigned to a committee. The majority of firearm bills are assigned to the Judiciary Committee, which is one of the hardest working committees insofar as they face the largest number of bills, because the bills that apply to that committee, there's multiple. But who gets to get on that committee? It's all by secret ballots. So we can't hold anyone accountable for getting elected or not even pursuing a spot on that committee. We can't even hold our own senators accountable for not trying to get on that committee to pass good legislation. So when a senator says, I'm pro-2A, and they've made no effort to try to get on that committee, then I have to call them out for that, right? But I can't, because there's no way to know. Did they put their name in the hat, and who voted for them? So basically, we have an 8-2 majority of anti-Second Amendment folks on the committee that hears the majority of our firearm-related bills. They're elected, but they're not supervised or held accountable, right? And so that's a public problem. We elect people to represent us, to represent our values, to do the jobs that we've asked them to do, but we're their managers, and we're not even watching what they're doing. So they're not getting any feedback, they're not getting called out, they're not being held accountable. And basically for now, our success is measured by stopping bad bills and our work effort to advance good ones. So, we are ranked 40th in the nation. Okay, so if you look at Nebraska, it's that kind of dark teal. The only places darker than us are California and some eastern states. Massachusetts.
Jersey, maybe Maryland.
Yeah. Okay? This is Nebraska. Crazy.
What's the ranking based on?
Firearms freedom. So the fact that we have to have a permit to purchase, the fact that we have no constitutional carry, the fact that we have no state preemption. State preemption is a law that a state passes that says only the state can control ownership, possession, transportation of firearms. We attempted to get state preemption passed 4.5 years ago. We got it to its second vote in the unicameral, and then it stalled and it failed. So, why? Well, municipalities, cities, Omaha and Lincoln in particular, and the police unions in both those places testified against state preemption because they felt they needed to have all these ordinances that restrict firearms in order to combat crime and hold criminals accountable. When they testified on behalf of this idea, they stated that there were 7 cases in the last 20 years in Omaha where that firearms registration requirement helped them deal with a criminal. They didn't say whether it helped them catch the criminal or prosecute the criminal or put the criminal in jail. They just said it helped them with their case. So for instance, in Omaha, if you don't have a concealed carry permit, you have to register all your handguns. You can't go to the store and buy one and walk away with it. You have to take paperwork, take it to the chief of police, register it, come back, and then that firearm is given to you. There's also restrictions on open carry. So Nebraska is an open carry state. We have no laws at the state level that restrict your ability to open carry a firearm as long as you're not a prohibited person. In Omaha, you have to have an open carry permit, which means you got to go to the concealed carry class and take your certificate and pay $10 to be able to open carry, where everywhere else in the state, you can't, okay? In Lincoln, there are 38 misdemeanors in the city of Lincoln that make you a prohibited person. One of them, for instance, is carrying a concealed weapon. Sounds like a really bad crime, right? Carrying a concealed weapon. Okay, it does. How many of you have pocket knives right now? How many of you have a blade that might be longer than 3.5 inches? And how many of you have it concealed right now? Well, that's concealing a deadly weapon. If your pocket knife blade is longer than 3.5 inches. So you can get a ticket in Lincoln, which most people just charge off and say, I'll pay the fine. And for 10 years, you're a prohibited person from being able to have a firearm. You can go to your sheriff and get a permit to purchase, passing all the NICS background checks, right, at the federal and state level, and be a prohibited person in Lincoln. And in Lincoln, they have backdoor registration. So you don't go and actually register your firearm. All the stores report all of the sales to the Lincoln Police Department. And then when someone's on admin duty or light duty, that law enforcement officer basically looks up every sale and then looks you up. And if they find out you're a prohibited person, they come and they confiscate all your firearms. Right? So that's the issue that we have without state preemption, is we have a patchwork quilt that makes traveling through Omaha or Lincoln or any other city who decided to change their laws, they can't. Right?
How many people in the room today were aware before now that if you don't have a concealed carry permit, you cannot take a handgun into Omaha without registering it with the police?
Yeah.
A handful of you. Most of you didn't know that. How many of you don't admit to any crimes, but how many of you potentially could have gotten in trouble, or could one day, if you didn't know that, get in trouble for doing that? We all could get in trouble for that, right? If we didn't know that. There's no sign at city limits telling you that either. It's on you to look up the laws for every place you go to.
How many of you were young at one time? And whether you went to college or not, maybe when you were young, you may have went to a house party and maybe got a ticket for disturbing the peace, right? Playing your music too loud. You lose your gun rights in Lincoln for having disturbing the peace misdemeanor. Does that make any logical sense? No. But that's what we have in the state of Nebraska, which is why we're 40th. Because we don't have the laws that protect what should be absolutely protected by Article 1, Section 1, the first paragraph of the Nebraska Constitution. Now, I'm not going to ask you how many of you know what that paragraph says.
Read it.
I would love you to read it.
Article 1, Section 1. All persons by nature are free and independent and have certain inherent and inalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, and the right to keep and bear arms for security or defense of self, family, home, and others, and for common defense, hunting, recreational use, and all other lawful purposes. And such rights shall not be denied or infringed by the state or any subdivision thereof. To secure these rights and the protection of property, governments are instituted among people, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed.
Okay? Yeah?
So you earlier said that part of your responsibility is to get laws passed that you like, and bad bills are sent to a committee that are checked to make sure that they're constitutional.
So all bills get checked for constitutionality first.
You're just telling me, he just read something that says most of the bills aren't constitutional.
You've made my point for me. I can do a mic drop now. So here's the issue. The people, through referendum, passed an amendment to change the language in that paragraph. The goal was constitutional carry. Okay? This was prior to concealed carry passing. The goal was to make it absolutely clear, state and subdivisions, which means cities and counties, you have no right to infringe or restrict the law abiding from the way we want to use our tools if we're using those in a lawful way. That was the goal of that. And every bill that has been attempted to be passed, and every bill that we haven't gotten passed that further secures those rights, the elected officials who aren't voting in support of these, or aren't voting against the ones that need to be stopped, are breaking their oath, right, to defend the Constitution of Nebraska, and are trying to do unconstitutional things. And it's the lack of awareness in Nebraskans that causes us this issue. We should be incredibly angry. Don't I look like a dangerous, angry woman? Right? I am the stereotype. Right? Yeah.
Put a hand on her kid and see how she changes, though.
Yes. Well, no, Corinne's good with her gun.
Okay.
Yeah. Next one. All right. So this year, surprisingly, was a great year for some really good bills. We were so excited with January. Yeah. November and December, when we were reading the language that was being proposed, we were astounded at the number of pro-Second Amendment bills being brought forward by multiple senators. So it wasn't one or two. They had several senators stepping up. So Senator Bosselman had heard from his constituents that it would be nice to get notified, hey, your concealed carry permit's going to expire. You might want to renew it. How many of you get a renewal notice for your car registration? How many of you get a renewal notice for your license? They were going to use the same system to just give you a little card in the mail in an envelope that said, Sheldon, get online, renew your permit. We couldn't get that passed out of committee. LB 244 was going to give you a grace period of 30 days. How many of you have driven on an expired license? How many of you have driven on the paper version of the license? Same thing. We're going to get a 30-day grace period. Nope, can't get that one passed either. Next. Come on, computer. LB 188. Okay. Have you heard about the Sanctuary County movement? Have you heard about the proclamation from Governor Ricketts in support of a Second Amendment sanctuary? We had a bill, literally, the Second Amendment Preservation Act, which would have forbid any agency, any law enforcement office, any elected official, any Nebraska dollar to be put forward towards enforcing any illegal executive orders or federal bills, unless it was in compliance with Nebraska's Constitution. So it wasn't going to strip all firearm laws from Nebraska. It was looking forward. If you try to ban magazines with standard capacity, if you try to ban flash suppressors because we think the bright light needs to be brighter, some of these things they do, it was going to protect us from federal encroachment, because the federal government has to use local agencies and assets to enforce federal law. We don't have millions of federal law enforcement officers that can come in and swarm a state. It's the same way that places like San Francisco and sanctuary counties and sanctuary states with regards to federal immigration laws say we're not going to comply. It's the same effect. If the state does not help the federal government, then the laws become moot. How many of you know about Colorado and the refusal to enforce marijuana laws, right? They didn't legalize marijuana, they decided to decriminalize it. So they're not enforcing federal law in their state. This would be the same. The Second Amendment Sanctuary Act was going to preserve our rights, at least what we have now, from further infringement. We had the highest number of pro people show up to the hearing, send emails, make phone calls. Every committee member was busy listening to Nebraskans. There was one opponent, a citizen who opposed it. We can't get that pulled out of committee because of a tie. We can't break that tie. Next.
And some of the senators, when citizens have called them, have responded with, there's just no support for this. Nebraskans don't want this. It's not true. Phone faux pas.
I know. I owe you all a beer. And of course, it's the one phone call with the funny thing. So my daughter loves to get into my phone and change ringers.
Oh.
Yeah. So long story short, 3 days ago, she changed my dad's number to police sirens, very, very loud police sirens. So I'm driving a little fast, and my phone's right here in the center console. I survived, but it was pretty scary because I was like, whoa, because I was like surrounded. All right, LB 116. We were against this. There is a Republican senator in Omaha, Senator McAllister. Last year, he was doing the assault weapons ban. This year, he was doing we're going to have a waiting period, a mandatory waiting period for you to get a permit to purchase. And we're going to increase the fee. And to soften it up, we were going to force concealed carry permit curriculum to include anti-suicide messaging. Okay, that's not so bad. But how many of you have been to a concealed carry class? Do you think anti-suicide messaging is necessarily the most effectively delivered by the standard concealed carry permit instructor? Right? It's a very serious topic, one that deserves respect and attention, and just shoving it into curriculum, which already has a whole lot to teach, where you're going to just basically don't kill yourself, moving on, you know? But that's how he tried to get this passed, by calling it an anti-suicide bill, so that when I testified against it, what did I look like?
Pro-suicide.
Pro-suicide. However, when myself and my daughter testified against this bill, we mentioned that because that's how I lost my husband, which is what made me a gun owner, is he died by suicide. So don't tell me that this is the most effective way to prevent people taking their life. And so we were able to kill that bill. Next. All right. Anyone here not have a concealed carry permit? Okay. How many of you have a car, who just raised your hand, that does not have a trunk? So you have like a Suburban and open trunk. Okay. Did you know that right now, if your handgun is in a range bag in the rear of a vehicle like a Suburban, and you don't have a concealed carry permit, you are illegally carrying a concealed weapon right now, because of a Supreme Court ruling that changed how the current language in our laws discuss what is on or about your person. So most of us would know if it's concealed where I can get to it, then yeah, that's a concealed weapon and I'm in violation of carry concealed. No one would think that in the back of your range bag where you have to crawl over 4 or 5 seats to get to the rear of your vehicle, that that is on or about your person. But currently right now, that's where we all stand.
This is in Nebraska?
In Nebraska.
So a brother, family member, whatever, wants to go out and shoot skeet with his shotgun, it's in the trunk, he doesn't have concealed carry.
In the trunk, if the trunk can be locked.
But they got Suburbans.
Yes, then right now he is illegally carrying concealed.
They're illegal.
Correct. It would be better to put it on your dashboard and open carry it where you're going.
By the letter of the law, the shotgun, the hunting rifle, in a case, still qualifies as a concealed weapon.
So walking to the range to go shoot it, from your car to the range, you're breaking law.
Now, I don't think we've heard of anybody ever getting fined or hit for that, have we? At least not in Greater Nebraska. But it's up to the officer.
That's the issue. So, if you are in a certain area of town, that officer will likely arrest you. If you're out here, you're probably okay, because it's officer's discretion. Okay? Is that how the law should be applied, though? No. The law is supposed to be blind to what economic factors you're dealing with, what kind of car you drive, what race, color, or creed you may be. The law is supposed to be blind, but the application of this particular issue is not blind. Senator Slama. Okay. Castle Doctrine. Have you heard of Castle Doctrine? Did you know that Nebraska has what's called Castle Doctrine Light? Okay. So Castle Doctrine basically says your home is your castle and that it would be expected that you could lawfully defend yourself in your own home from an intrusion, right? Someone breaking in. You don't have a duty to retreat from your home, and you don't have a duty to retreat from your place of work. But anywhere else you are, for instance, if somebody came in armed right now, the law would expect us, if we could safely get out of here without engaging the threat, we are to run away. But the Castle Doctrine Light issue is, you are not given the benefit of the doubt as the homeowner that you were lawfully defending yourself and your family from a violent intruder. You would still have to provide evidence that if you shot at that person to stop the threat, that you did so because it met the immediate fear and threat of death, serious bodily harm, kidnapping, or rape. It's not automatically you're innocent until proven guilty. You're guilty until you can prove you're innocent in the state of Nebraska. So LB 300, which everyone called a very common sense bill, if someone's beating down my door, they're not here to sell me cookies, right? We couldn't get that passed. So LB 404, Senator Lowe had a great idea, but he forgot to talk to us. He was going to extend the CHP from a 5-year to a 10-year, so you only have to renew every 10 years. The issue with that, though, the federal government only recognizes permits for the purchasing of handguns if it's a 5-year permit or less. So you wouldn't be able to use your CHP to buy. We gave him an amendment that said make it optional. You could get a 5-year or a 10-year. But that, we couldn't even get that passed out. Okay. Any law enforcement folks? Okay. So, currently, if you're not responding to a call from the school or from someone around that something criminal is happening at a school, a law enforcement officer cannot go onto school grounds armed. Did you know that? Okay. Because, you know, schools, people lose their mind in schools. And he's law-abiding and law enforcing on the sidewalk, but becomes a crazed killer when he enters the parking lot. So there was a bill to allow off-duty law enforcement officers, right, to be able to come onto campus, like pick up their kids, do programs, educational programs, while armed. And we couldn't get that passed. So, this is old. What is today?
27. This is a week ago.
A week ago, we are now at 70. Not 63, 70 counties have
For those of
turned
you that
green.
do math in your head like I do, I've already done it for you. 69.5 is 3/4 of the counties. So 70 means that we are at 3/4 of all Nebraska counties now.
Yes.
Without this being a law, isn't that just blowing smoke and just doesn't have carry any weight?
Let's explain
It
that.
just makes the politicians that were there and the leaders feel one.
So there are proclamations, which is what Governor Ricketts did, and then there are resolutions. Okay. Now there are strongly worded resolutions, and then there's lightly worded resolutions. The majority of resolutions state unequivocally that the county, as the commissioner, is responsible for county funds and county activities and county utilization of resources, empowers the sheriff, who is the highest law of the land. If you're not familiar with the power of a sheriff compared to local PD, Nebraska State Patrol, the sheriff is the law of the land. And the sheriff, who we've spoken to in all these counties, is going to affirm that an unconstitutional directive is not going to be complied with, and the county is affirming that resolution. So the two work together, where the county is, we're supporting our sheriff making that decision, and we're going to back him or her up, and that sheriff is saying, I will not comply with an illegal or unconstitutional executive order or law.
Every law enforcement officer and every elected official in the state, at any level, has sworn an oath to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of both the U.S. and the state of Nebraska. And the sheriff falls under both of those umbrellas because they're law enforcement and they're elected.
Right.
These sheriffs are saying that they value that oath that they made to you as voters in that, or residents in that county. So if you're not in one of the counties that has turned green, then
So that's where the power comes
we'll
from.
get there.
Because the federal government, again, does not have the resources to come in here and start doing a door-to-door search if you have magazines of more than 10 rounds. They don't have that capacity. And so in the same way that sanctuary counties from the illegal immigration perspective are not complying with federal law, that's what these resolutions are saying. So you can pass all you want at the federal level, but these resolutions say not in our county. We're not going to enforce them.
I thought Madison was a constitutional carry.
So this is actually a map from April 20th. And there are way more green counties now than when I got this map to stick in here preparing for today. So there's definitely counties that are missing. We have Cass, we have, what was the other one? Cedar, Madison.
Cedar, Madison, and Howard all turned green today. Thank you, Madison County Commissioners, for doing that.
Yeah.
We appreciate you, Mr. Euler.
It's huge.
Yeah, we turned green today, we signed the resolution.
Yeah. So it is hard because I sleep about 2 hours a night, which means it's hard to keep this map up to date because we're getting information all the time about what's going on, and sometimes they're passing faster than we can make a new map.
And let me just reiterate, everybody within the NFOA is a volunteer. We're not getting paid to do this stuff. And I'm not saying that for sympathy. We do this because it's what we care about, okay? Our hearts are here. But that means we all have day jobs, or more than one. It's like our county commissioners all have day jobs as well. Being a commissioner doesn't pay the bills. Being an NFOA board member doesn't pay bills. We work on this in our spare time as we can. We've got a very dedicated volunteer in Lincoln who actually works in the office of Congressman Tom Brewer, and his name is Dick Clark. He's legal counsel for the government committee. And he has been putting in just, I don't know how many hours a day, tracking down these resolutions, getting copies of the ones that are signed from each county. He's got a spreadsheet. He is the one that makes these maps and keeps them updated as he gets time. But I would hate to be that man's phone at the end of the day because I know it just smokes. He's used it so much all day.
Yeah.
But I just want to mention that's part of why every time we post a map, it's already outdated because something else has happened that day where a county has added the discussion to the agenda and we need to make it yellow. Or they went ahead and signed the resolution and we need to make it green. The ones that are still gray, We have not gotten confirmation, and it doesn't make this map until we have hard confirmation from somebody in that county, not just somebody that comments to us on Facebook, but from somebody from the courthouse that says that it is on the agenda, or it is scheduled for a vote, or it has been signed. That's how this map gets updated. So as things are happening in some of these counties, sometimes people get a little impatient with this. Well, we're not going to turn it yellow or turn it green and then find out that, well, that's not actually the case. So we're getting this information as it comes into us. Now, how does it come into us? People send it from all different directions. NFOA is not driving this. We did not start this. We did not make it happen, and we are not the ones making it go. That is everybody across the state of Nebraska, just like you. You are the ones that are responsible for making this happen. We take no credit. All we're doing is trying to get the information out and make people aware. We're cheerleaders. The cheerleaders on the sidelines do not score touchdowns, right? You guys are the people on the field that are making this happen. And so are the voters in every other county that has some color up here. And the ones that are not colored in yet, I know that there's people in every county right now that are working on it.
Yeah.
Quick question, you said that you're a lobbyist. There's a few of us in here that attended the Madison County and then also went up to Pierce. But you guys had some wonderful information on your site, and I dug through a lot of that. And so we have all these towns like, you know, Omaha and Lincoln that have made all these infringing rules, but it says right here in the first article of our Nebraska Constitution provides that no bill of attainder, ex post facto law, or law impairing the obligation of contracts, or making any irrevocable, it's a tough word to say, grant of special privileges or immunity shall be passed. So if that's one of the first things in the Nebraska Constitution, shouldn't all these laws that they've passed afterwards be null and void according to the Constitution?
And as an NFOA member, and when I was secretary, and when I was president, and just as a lobbyist, and really important, like a lobbyist is just a person. Now there are paid lobbyists, and I'm not one of them. When I have shared that information with those who would best learn from it, right, the Omaha and Lincoln senators, you know what their response is? No? Sue us. So.
How many of you have been to a sporting event that had referees or officials, umpires of some kind? How many of you have seen the officials make a bad call on the field?
Right.
Whose job is it to interpret this? The umpires are basically the law enforcement, or in this case, they're the court, they're the judge. If the judges say that it's this way, then it's this way until we can get it changed.
Right. So here's the challenge. We have done lawsuits as NFOA. Lawsuits against Omaha, we've won both. We've helped with lawsuits in Lincoln, we've won those 3. But you could imagine what a super grassroots organization with no members' dues has in our bank account. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So what ended up happening with those is we were able to partner with some national 2A organizations, Second Amendment Foundation, FPC, and a few others, because we had clear and convincing evidence that certain citizens or one citizen's rights were just horrifically being infringed upon. And it was like one of those like black and white, we're gonna win this case, right? And so during those times, and this was like early in the late 80s, early 90s, we did huge fundraisers. People were donating $1, $5, whatever, and we raised enough money because the court is expensive. It's so expensive, right? And there are some attorneys who are 2A friendly, but they got to make a living too. They got to, you know, feed their families and pay their mortgages. And so we're trying to do it with the current ways we've been doing it, but I'll tell you, just as me, I'm losing my patience.
Well, with the grassroots movement and everybody, essentially, I think they've woken up a sleeping giant. Because there's been more people at these commissioner meetings, from what I've seen,
than ever before.
So if we wanted to, as a grassroots movement, as we the people, to take that first article in the Constitution and say, how do we go about doing that without having to fund $200,000 in a court case.
Okay.
How do we, I mean, I'm just acting, I
So,
know that there's no
steps
simple
before
answer.
that. Okay, so if you're from a city like here, with fairly solid candidates, right, as elected representatives, right? So, like, I have property in Cass County, I have a great senator there. I live in Papillion, my senator's nice and okay, but not really like hard-hitting. I'd love to go to Brewers County, you know, talk about, you know, man I believe in. So do you guys remember when we were really focusing on Georgia elections and the 2 senators who were going to trip or flip the number of senators in our Senate? Do you know how much money from outside of Georgia went to those 2 candidates?
A lot.
A lot.
Take on the Bloombergs and the sort of
Right.
stuff.
What ended up happening here in Nebraska is we'll give money to our guy, but screw everybody else. So my strategy that I'll be working with some other organizations is, if we're safe and secure in Norfolk, if we're safe and secure in Cass County, where do we need help? Well, we need help in Lincoln, and we need help in Omaha, and a few other counties that I won't mention who have some strange people elected. Well, if we're safe here and our guy or gal's going to get elected, then why aren't we donating to the campaigns where that is another vote to get it out of committee, to get it out on the floor? Because everyone else in the United States is doing it, we need to do it, right? Whether the Republican or Democrat, Libertarian, Independent, right? The other part of it is voter education. How do we truly assess the folks that we're hiring to do the job? Well, we're going to be doing a strategy about that. Our organization is a 501c4, which is an education and lobbying organization, so I can't do what's called electioneering. So NFOA can't say, vote for Senator Brewer. NFOA loves him, right? I can't say that, so I did it right now. I'm just using it as an example. Okay?
Words matter.
Words matter. Don't edit that first part out. Caveat's important. But there are things called political action committees. And most of us hate them because they put those awful ads that you just get sick and tired of seeing during the election period, whether it's at the federal or state level. They're very annoying. But literally, political action committees are the ways to fund campaigns for those who don't have the funding, because there are people like you and me who can't mortgage our home to raise money to have a campaign. Or, even if we don't support a candidate, we can educate and go anti, right? And show the voting record, show the communications, put out the notices that this person says they're this way, but we have proof that they're otherwise, and their word can't be, you know, respected, right? And so we're looking at creating one of those, another thing on our plate. But we have to do this. We have to get way more serious than we have been in the past. The more I've learned since 2014 about politics in Nebraska, the more disenchanted I am. I used to kind of hold elected officials immediately like a little higher than me. Like, they're doing a job nobody else wants to do, they're putting themselves out there. I can respect that of anyone, even if I don't agree with them politically. However, the high school shenanigans of the backdoor deals and the schmoozing and the I want to be popular, you know, that so many do, is just disgusting. I know we only pay them $12,000 something. All right, I know that. But they're getting powerful and rich just by the position, right? And I would much rather have someone who farms for a living, right, who can take off the short amount of time during the session because the rest of the community helps them with the farm, represent us, than some of these folks who work for nonprofits and all the money for the nonprofit goes to paying them. And there's actually no work. That's the other thing that I found, is the majority of the folks who get elected that I don't care for are funded that way. They can stay and work and do all this crazy stuff at the state capitol because they don't have to worry about a paycheck because their nonprofit's paying them for their consulting, right? So.
Okay, I'm going to preface the next slide. Remember earlier we established there should be somebody that does something about some of this that's going on. We've already established that's each one of us that are in the room, that's who should do it. How many of you, by show of hands, know what to do now? You know you need to do something. How many of you know what that something is? One? Okay.
So, information is power. Knowledge is power, right? When we started sharing the best practices that we learned from other counties started spinning up and executing it way more smoothly with less time and less effort. Because they were able to convey in a way that made their commissioners or supervisors listen. They had the facts behind them, the law, right? To address concerns by the county attorney, whose job is to protect the county from lawsuits. So our educational campaign has created the speed at which the state's turning green. So joining NFOA, membership is free. We do not spam you with emails. You're just going to get emails of stuff you actually need to know, right? What's going on in the state capitol, who do you need to contact, how do you need to contact them, and what information can you use to craft a really hard-hitting message, okay? Our Facebook, follow us on that. We're constantly putting out good information there. Volunteering, okay. So let me see how many jobs do I have. So I work full-time at Offutt Air Force Base, I work part-time at a gun range, and I own 3 small businesses, and I'm a single parent, and I'm president of NFOA. So when someone says, I really don't have time, I just smile and nod and move on. Why? We have volunteering opportunities that take 10 minutes. Can you make a phone call? You can volunteer with NFOA. Do you have friends who own guns? You can volunteer with NFOA. You want to take a big box of brochures and make sure everyone you know knows about NFOA? That's volunteering with NFOA. Okay? It doesn't have to be a board position. It doesn't even have to be a permanent position. It's just the grassroots. You know, so we have folks who do recruiting, so they go to gun shows all the time, and they print out a 1-page flyer and they just hand out these flyers as they're going around looking at gun show stuff. We have a community liaison where we're wanting to basically put someone to be a POC for people locally to ask questions about NFOA and
Do
generate.
they have to be a person of color?
No. No. No!
Just checking.
God, John. You should have edited that out.
Sorry, point of contact is what I meant to say.
But here's the thing. Community liaison, whatever you want to call it.
Yay, a sense of humor.
Yes. But at the same time, John, we'll talk about what you're working on. So event planning, newsletters, research, donate, right? So you don't have any time, but you have $5.
My vision, my goal is, I might not get 2 terms. Who knows if I'll ever get reelected as a board member. Okay, plus if I make fun of her, then okay. So, but honestly, I'm going to do the most I can while I know I'm here. It's a 2-year term. It started in December, so it goes through December of 2022. Well, November of 2022. Before I am done, I want to see that community liaison. I want to see 93 of them. I want every county to have a Nebraska Firearms Owners Association volunteer in that county. Somebody that everybody can say, hey, there's a man or a woman locally who's plugged in, knows what's going on, is working with NFOA to help them out, and they're the person in Brown County, they're the person in Keith County to talk to, they're the person in Cedar County, in Pierce County, in Madison County to talk to and find out what's going on. And plus, you've got all these other ways you can reach out to us as well. But I'd love to have representation in all 93 counties before I'm done with this.
Yeah, it would be huge. I did a gun show, where was it? Grand Island or west of Grand Island? Because my daughter had softball at the same time, so it was great. I was already out there. And I met a gentleman, started talking about NFOA, and I found out he was from literally like the Colorado border, Western County. There was 2 of them, side by side. And he was chatting with me during COVID that basically all permit to purchases, the process to get one had stopped. That the sheriff in those counties was like, COVID, we don't want to interact with people, so we're not going to do any of the processing, right? It had been that way for 5 months by the time I had this chat with this person. When Omaha tried to do it, because they were going to stop the gun registration, which meant you couldn't have your gun. Because if you can't register, you can't have it. I made 2 phone calls, and in 15 minutes, Omaha changed their mind. So I called the 2 senators, and in about 45 minutes, the sheriff's Facebook page for both these counties had, the following process has been adopted for the permit to purchase, right? And so it's not that I have any power, I just know stuff, and I know people. And I can't hear what's going on in Western Nebraska unless I have someone to help me know what's going on in Western, so we know to go help them. And that's the key of these positions, is information, right? Our organization represents all of us, and yet we don't have really good representation in some places, and they can't benefit from what we can do as a community of people who are engaged and informed. And I want to share all that I know so that I'm not necessary anymore, right? In 4 years, I have learned more about what's going on in Nebraska than I'd ever imagined. And all that can be shared and empower everyone to have the same influence we have as an organization, as a citizen, which is what we really want to have happen.
And Trish,
Yeah.
You listed the Facebook page. Also wanted to remind people that we also have a forum on the website that's a separate sign up through the online community page.
Correct. Great point. So not all of us are on social media. Not all of us feel very comfortable with posting questions about what's going on in our communities or about gun laws, or I think I made a mistake and somebody help me, or I want to buy or I want to sell. You know, all those things are controlled by the national social media places. So we have an online community, which is a member-based. You sign up for, it exists on our web server. You put a handle rather than your name, and all of the information that we share through all these town halls and other things are all posted there as well. And it's a really great community resource, right? So when someone's traveling, you know, out west and they're like, hey, is there an outdoor range where I can sign in my gun before I go hunting? You're gonna get an answer to that question. If I'm traveling to another state and I wanna know what's weird about those gun laws, we have lawyers who are members who just chime in and answer questions. So thank you for mentioning that. It's a really great benefit, and it's also free.
Not only that, there's also a classified section. So unlike Facebook and most of social media, if you've got a rifle you want to unload, by that I mean sell, if you've got a rifle that you would like to sell, or ammo, or magazines, or a scope, whatever it is, there's a category for everything on that forum. And as long as nobody's breaking any laws, then it's fine. It goes. Anything goes that is within the scope of the law. Yeah. And comments will go if they pertain to the topic of that original post. As long as, again, they don't attack somebody. You can speak freely without fear of censorship either. Just like in real life, if you attack somebody with your words, then that comment's going to get pulled down. And if you're a repeat offender, you're going to probably get into trouble for it. But it is a safe place to go and buy, sell, trade. If you don't want to sell something, but you just want to talk about your favorite lever gun, there's somebody else in there that does too.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So this is our email address, admin@nebraskafirearms.org. If you want to learn about membership, if you want information on what's going on in the state capitol, if you just want to be put on our mailing list, feel free to shoot us an email, right? Sometimes I don't respond that moment. It might be that night or the morning, usually within 24 hours. But recently, it's taken me about 48 hours to respond because I'm sharing this email and it's working, which is awesome. So you can message us on Facebook too. Myself or John tend to be monitoring that all the time. If you have questions, we're happy to help you. And then join us at nebraskafirearms.org.
How many of you remember what the cost is to join? Nothing. Half off today.
Thank you all for coming tonight.
Hey, I've got a question.
Yeah, at this point we're going to do some questions. So.
Yeah.
On the county Second Amendment sanctuary movement, have any counties in Nebraska where this has been brought up and addressed by the commissioners, has it been refused?
Yes, there has been some refusals, and then there were some reattacks, and then some wins. So Saline County is an example of a county whose commissioners listened to a large group of people come to speak at the commissioner meeting to request that it be put on the agenda. Not to get it even passed, but just to have it on the agenda for discussion. And they refused to hear it. Then I got word of that, and I reached out to Saline County, and gosh, within about a week and a half, it was on the agenda. I have no idea how, and it got passed.
Cool.
So,
I
yes.
mean, do you foresee all 93 counties being
So
green
let's just put
someday?
this, Douglas and what, Lancaster?
Yeah. Sarpy.
Maybe the last two. Now Sarpy, that's a whole nother, I live in Sarpy. So I have a personal, so I'm creating a coalition, if you will, doing it a little bit more formal in my grassroots way. So they're gonna have a larger tsunami of support to get it put on the agenda. And if they're not going to do that, then I will be a role model of how to hold your elected officials accountable. So, yes.
Earlier you had said that in the judiciary that was controlled 8-2 by the socialist fascists.
Pretty much. Your words perfectly kind of reflect that,
That's
yeah.
what they are. You said it's a closed election. Now, if I would happen to, or anybody would happen to know the two senators that are on there that are conservative, can we contact them and ask them who those other 8 members are, and then could they tell us?
So the thing is, who's on the committee is already known. Once you're on the committee, you're on it, it's public knowledge who's on it.
Oh, how do you find out?
You just go to the unicameral website, go to committees, pick the
I'll look for
judiciary
judiciary.
or the veteran government, veteran and military affairs. Those are the two. And you'll see the composition of the committee members.
NebraskaLegislature.gov is the website.
Nebraska
Okay, and
legislature.
then, as far as communicating with us when we sign up and we're part of this movement, do you send out like an email? And the easiest thing for me was when we're doing Article 5 Convention of States, we send out an email that contact these senators' emails, and it's listed there, so all you gotta do is tap on the name of the senator,
And it opens
then
up
it'll
an
open
email.
it up, and you can send a message. That's
Yeah.
the easiest thing for me, since I'm not a tech wizard.
We are trying to make it that easy. So that's something we actually adopted within the last 6 months or so, is not only calls to action, with language that you would then use to make your own in your message, and the emails and phone numbers of all the committee members. Yes.
One thing that we don't want to do is have a form letter
Right.
that you can just copy and paste, and you can copy and paste, and you can copy and paste, and you can copy and paste. Because if the same letter shows up 100 times in that senator's inbox, some senators read their emails, other senators have aides to do it for them. But whoever's reading this is gonna look at the opening line or a couple lines of that email and say, oh, it's another one, throw it in this pile. Oh, it's another one, throw it in this pile.
And it won't count.
It doesn't, even if it counts, it doesn't have the impact. If it's your words, you can take what we have there, put it into your words, and they have to read a whole unique email from each one of you. The time that it takes them to do that, because they have to read them. If they, maybe you put your own thoughts at the bottom of that form letter. They won't get that far, trust me, not after the first couple. So make it your own email, and that's why if anybody asks us, why don't we put a form letter up there that I can just copy and paste it?
Mhm.
Well,
Or the petition.
or the petition,
Petitions don't work.
not online.
No, the state capitol elected officials, no petition can be presented as evidence
Right.
in support of any particular.
The only time a petition works is if it's an actual ballot initiative petition, and that's, what, $250,000 to be successful
At least, yeah. Yes.
I just want to give you guys props because up until 3 weeks ago, I had known about the organization, but I had one of my fellow law enforcement friends send me some stuff about Madison County. And I clicked on that and started digging, and I'm like, holy crap, these guys are on it. So thank you for doing that, because it's made a difference in our neck of the woods at least. And looking at the map, it's definitely made a difference across Nebraska. So thank you
And
guys for
again,
doing
the thanks
Thank
that
you.
goes to us is, as cheerleaders, the work that's being done in the trenches is being done by the people here in Madison County, the commissioners that are listening and actually care about their constituents. The sheriff and the sheriff's department, I don't think there are any deputies that are not in favor of such a thing. And the sheriff is in favor, and the county attorney is on board with it. I mean, everybody worked together the way that Nebraskans do, right? That's what grassroots means. It's not coming from up here, coming down. It's coming from the bottom and it's working its way up. It's a community pulling together. We're all adults in here. I'm damn proud to be a Nebraskan. I've only ever lived in Nebraska, and I only ever want to live in Nebraska because we've got the best people of any state in the country. I've seen it time and again. You've seen it time and again. This is what our people, this is what Nebraskans can do. It doesn't take much. These folks that have done this, they haven't put 8-10 hours a day into doing this. They've called their commissioners. And in most counties, you know your commissioners, or at least you know who they are.
Right. So let me just add one more thing before we take some questions. So this is like one of these aha moments. Let's say the whole state turned green. We're not done. Okay? We're done at the county-ish. But until we get constitutional carry, until we get state preemption, until we get Omaha and Lincoln ordinances off the books, we're not done. It's going to take a whole lot more to go from 40th in how many states? There's 50, right? So far, knock on wood, stays that way. But we shouldn't be at the bottom 10. So what's going to matter? Electing people that are going to do the job, holding them accountable, campaigning for people outside of our area to get those places in a better shape than we are. There's a whole lot more work to do.
Before Troy asks this question, would you just real quick, so we've got the county resolution, we've got the governor's proclamation, and we've got LB 188 that we wanted to see passed that would make this, that would be the Second Amendment Preservation Act, which would be a law passed by the unicameral. Would you explain the differences between all three of those, why they're all important and why one of them doesn't negate the rest?
So how many of you remember Beef Day by Governor Ricketts? That's the same thing he did with the Second Amendment Proclamation. It's Beef Day. If he liked me enough, he could make it Patricia Herald Day, your proclamation, okay? So it's a message, it is, it's not worthless, but it has no teeth, which is the question you have. Resolutions at the county level have teeth because you're not going to get any of our time, any of our money, or any of our resources, federal government. Don't come in here. The door is closed, okay? The Second Amendment Preservation Act will forbid all agencies in the state of Nebraska. City police, Nebraska State Patrol, anyone, from following unconstitutional executive orders and or any bills that come out at the federal level. Like there will be a wall, if you will, to preserve what we have now and then further it.
I really doubt if a lot of people really have any idea how much impact this actually has, coming from a law enforcement background. And when you compare it with the sanctuary cities for illegal immigrants, and this is a whole different thing than letting murderers out without cooperating with law enforcement from federal level to put those people in jail and get them out of our country. And your law enforcement officers, you know, the federal law enforcement officers may not be your brothers like the ones across the county borders are, but they're at least cousins.
They are.
And you want to work with them.
We do.
You want to do what's right.
Absolutely.
So this is not an easy thing for these sheriffs to say.
It is not easy. That's why when I've talked to sheriffs, like when this began over a year ago, like 2019, okay, I had a couple sheriffs from the Scottsbluff area and others give me a call. I need you to talk to the county attorney because the county attorney has concerns, okay, because of that very thing. So it started slow. We had to educate and educate and educate, and then I got Dick Clark, who's also a lawyer, who could speak lawyer speak, because I just speak freedom, you know, and it started happening, right? But only recently has it grown, and it's serious, okay? How many of you are veterans, okay? Our oath doesn't end, right? And so when I think of what Senator Brewer had to do in Katrina, as ordered by his officers to go confiscate lawfully owned firearms from the citizens in New Orleans and the surrounding parishes, that left a huge distaste in his mouth. So he's been there, he's done that, okay? And when you do your oath, at least I was enlisted, you're not to follow what? Unlawful orders. And the cojones, or the ovaries, that it takes to stand your ground and say, no, officer, I'm not going to comply with that because my oath is to the Constitution, not to you. That's a brave thing. and sheriffs are doing it across America. We've been contacted by a gentleman who's basically canvassing it from a national perspective, and he had not paid much attention to Nebraska. And he reached out to Dick Clark and says, what has happened lately? Right? Virginia was where it started. And now it's going all over. And Nebraska, by far, is the fastest constitutional carry or constitutional sanctuary state in the U.S. So we're even doing it faster than Virginia did.
Troy, you're a Madison County Commissioner. I just want to attest to what these guys are telling you about grassroots efforts. It was about a year ago I discussed with Todd Volk, our sheriff, this very topic. We had a decent discussion, and there just wasn't a lot of grassroots efforts. So we kind of tabled it and said until it comes up again. Well, here recently, I think the Omaha World Herald, Lincoln Star Journal posted Senator Bureau's map. And he had the whole article, and that's when the emails, the phone calls, the messenger messages started coming, and that's when I knew we needed to get on board and figure out what's going on. So first call I made, because I wanted information. You know, what was this really going to do? What was it going to enable us to do?
Right.
What wasn't it going to do? So the first call I made was to Senator Brewer's office. Guess who I got?
Dick Clark?
Dick Clark.
Awesome.
He is awesome.
Yeah.
And,
I remember him saying that he talked to you.
yeah. So I wanted this lady's number, and that's who I called, because I figured he'd have it, and I didn't know he was part of your group. And when Patricia answered the phone, or actually she called me back, I left a message, and we had a lengthy conversation, and she, over and above, I think, exceeded my expectations. I wanted other counties' resolutions, because I wanted to see what other counties were doing. And guys, believe me, there's some of these resolutions are 2 paragraphs long. Ours is about a page and a half, and it covers everything.
Yeah.
I think we wrote, between the sheriff, the county attorney, and us commissioners, we wrote a pretty strong resolution. I think it covers all the bases. And again, I made myself available and accessible. I only had one person, and me and this person had multiple conversations. He'd like to see guns go away forever, and that's where he's at. And I appreciate his opinion, and he has his reasons. But one person reached out. So thank you to everybody that stood up and voiced and stood up to this and said we need to do something. So
How do we find that resolution, Troy?
we're going to post it on the website, and I'm not so sure that Jerry isn't going to print it or have it available online with the Daily News.
What website?
The county website.
County?
Yeah. So we'll have it on there. So if you guys, I can, well, if you're not tech savvy, you won't be able to message me. I can forward you a copy, but if I can get an email, so yeah.
That
I've got a
is
copy, Bob.
Madison
Yeah.
County.
Can you take
I
care of
can take care of you, Bob.
Bobby's gonna take care of you.
Okay.
I got it.
Awesome.
Okay, Jim.
Thank you for those words. I appreciate
Yeah.
that very much.
I just was, maybe it's just a question, but when, I'm gonna say when that map turns fully green, will that have much of an effect on the people that are down there?
It already is. Okay, so right now, there is a bill, LB 236. Senator Brewer's bill. Yeah, bring it up if we have it on there. All right, it's constitutional carry at the county level.
We didn't put that in here.
Because I was trying to sleep.
It's okay.
Yeah. So
She got her allotted 2
Yeah.
hours last night even.
I know. So LB 236 got out of committee because a senator prioritized it because of the work of turning this map green. That senator said none of the bills he brought forward he was going to prioritize. He prioritized another person's bill. So that a county can declare itself a constitutional carry county. Now, I would love to have state constitutional carry. But what we found when we tried to get state preemption and a couple other bills was the lobbyists from all the cities and municipalities and even counties were like, local control, we want local control, right? What's good for us may not be good for them, and what's good for them may not be good for us, okay? And we get that. There's a tug of war at all levels of government, right? The federal government was supposed to be small. States were supposed to be sovereign, right? And so forth and so on. So what ended up happening is not only did they get it prioritized, but the number of senators who put their name as a co-sponsor of that bill has been exponential. And so there's now this wave effect that's happening. So we drop a stone in a pond and you just get small ripples. You are all throwing stones into the pond that is Nebraska politics. And when they said we woke a sleeping giant, we have woken a sleeping giant. So the pressure to stay in power, to stay elected, to get reelected, or brand new person to get elected, now they know that we're not just sitting idly by saying, you know, as long as I got my guns, I'm good, you know. No.
17 senators have signed their name as a co-sponsor alongside the original senator that introduced it. So 18 state senators have their name on that bill.
Right. So now we're getting national attention, you know, so we're gonna leverage that. And that's what happens when you win and lose. I leverage every win and I leverage every loss. Every loss tells me who's not in support of us and who do I need to get out of office. Right? So the proverbial political target. Right? So
I had mentioned that some of the senators that are on that committee that are blocking LB 188 from getting out of the committee, when people are reaching out to them, they're getting a response back that they're not aware of any support for this. The Second Amendment Preservation Act, the bill that would turn that into a statewide law, that whole map, statewide. There's not support for this, they're saying. Well, there is, and people are noticing, and we are going to call those senators out and show them the overwhelming evidence. There is support for this, and if you don't acknowledge that, you are lying. You're not even ignorant at this point because we've told you. You can either agree or you can lie. We're going to give them those two options. We being Nebraskans, not our organization, we can't do that.
I can bring
we can inform the Nebraskans, and the Nebraskans will do that.
Right. You'll make up your mind.
It's tough being up here. We've got to say certain things in a certain way.
Get me in the parking lot and I'm so much more upfront.
Right, I take this hat off.
Yeah. Recorder off. No. Yeah. So that's what's going to happen. So this session's going to end. 236 is probably likely to come up for debate starting next week or the week after. So like right now, the call to action is contact our senators and say, make this happen.
All 46 of them.
All 46 of them. Okay, so the whole state has to contact their senators so that we get that voted in. Yes.
Do you remember at one time the city of Columbus would not honor a concealed carry permit, if I remember right? Was that defeated through a lawsuit, or is that defeated? Okay.
Lawsuit. The same way Omaha didn't want to acknowledge it either.
Okay.
Yeah. So that is my,
I just didn't remember.
expensive ace in my, pocket, right? It's expensive, it's time consuming, and gosh, why do we have to do it?
Well, to me, I guess my thought is, once Columbus lost that, how in the world can Lincoln and Omaha continue to enforce that?
Lincoln and Omaha, bless their hearts, they're just above it all. We're special. Okay?
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah, now there are a couple senators from Lincoln, like they have some of the outskirts of Lincoln, they're okay, right? But as far as Omaha senators, woo, fun people. Yeah. So the thing is do we want Nebraska that looks like Omaha and Lincoln, or do we want Omaha and Lincoln looking like Nebraska, right? And so, and this also includes Bellevue, because Carol Blood as a senator is just a huge damn block to getting a lot of stuff done. She's the one who said, we already have the Second Amendment. We don't need this. Really? Okay. Yeah, not working. So that's what we're going to get done. Get people out of office and good people in.
If they honor the Second Amendment, it's full of intent, we'd be happy.
I know, that's just the thing. Yeah.
If that happened, there'd be no NFOA. And our intent is to work ourselves right out of a job.
Right. Yeah.
Then she can shift gears and go run for office.
Oh my God. So I've thought about that a little bit. If I did, I would literally probably only be in there for one term, because my job would be to be a thorn in everyone's side. Like, I would be the most honest and upfront and frank senator. I'd make Ernie Chambers look political, you know, and a smooth talker. Because when I watch, if you ever watch our unicameral, the video, oh my God, it's so fake and artificial. They stand there in front of their microphone with their eloquent words, and you know, they'll be off topic, like they're talking about some like ag bill, and someone else is talking about, you know, we're losing this and that. It's such a like soapbox for most of them, right? And then you have these hardworking people running around amongst them. So if I ever did, then that would be my 2 years of awesomeness.
You could also run for Congress or Senate and then become independently wealthy.
See, that's just, you know what? I'm going to become independently wealthy because what I value doesn't cost me anything. So my most precious possessions are my family and my friends. And now that you've come to this town hall, you are now my friends, so I count you in that wealth. So thank you.
I didn't ask earlier, is there anybody in the room who's not pro Second Amendment or pro gun or either anti or neutral capacity that came today? Okay, just wondering.
I don't know that they would, they often don't say they are though.
That's good, and that's,
it's uncomfortable, and I get
that's
it, and
fine.
it's still okay, because here's the thing.
This is a safe place to speak.
It is, and that's why I always say, I wasn't a gun owner my whole life. I'm not even from Nebraska originally. I'm sadly an escapee from the West Coast.
I will vouch for her. She came from California, but
Yeah.
she's one of us.
Yeah,
Don't
so,
hold it against her.
you know, in the same
She
way
lives in Sarpy County, but
that,
she's one of us.
the Puritans escaped England for freedom. Yeah, so I love it here.
I had to correct her though.
Best place.
She-
Care to elaborate about your circumstances that brought you to Nebraska?
So my last duty station was Offutt Air Force Base. So I had served primarily overseas, global war on terror. I was an air linguist. So my job was to go find terrorists and then make sure they were no longer terrorists. And so flew airborne reconnaissance missions. My last duty station was Offutt. Hadn't really planned on where I was going to live when I got out. But within about 2 years, having been throughout the United States and all over Europe and the rest of the world, I'm like, this is heaven. So when everyone's like, ooh, flyover country, I'm like, oh yeah, there's nothing but corn and cows here. Don't come here. Stay out.
Yep, that's what I tell people.
I have no problem with
I
that.
have an active campaign to get all of my out-of-state friends to believe that we don't have electricity or
Yeah,
running water, so
right.
they'll just stay away.
Yeah.
Come visit and then go.
Yeah.
Stay in California and New York.
Yeah.
Don't California,
Yeah.
my Nebraska.
And it's sad because, you know, I have family, and I mean, I wasn't raised in like an ultra-liberal like family. We strong roots. My father is an immigrant. I'm a first-generation American, so patriotism and American and what it means to be an American is like super huge. My father's from a country where they threw their citizens out the back of C-130s for having meetings like this. Okay, so when it comes to like speaking your voice in the First Amendment, like I'm very serious about those rights and freedoms. And so the fact that Nebraska is such an incredible place, and yet we still have so many opportunities to grow and get better, right, with regards to our rights and freedoms, and that's why I'm working so hard, right? It's not judging Nebraska, it's I want to lift it up. Because we know what happens. California didn't used to be that way. When I was 18, before I left to join the service, it was a fine place to live. And then it wasn't. And it didn't take too long, 20 years, and it transformed into what it is now.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
It brought up a topic. I went to American Legion College with a girl, and she lives in New York. She sent me a message today that she was so proud she got her first firearm, her first handgun. And I said, well, the next thing you need to do is take some training and get your concealed carry and shoot. She goes, it'll be 5 years. 5 years in New York to get your concealed carry before you're even eligible.
Yeah.
And as a single female.
In New York, forget it.
You know what I'm saying? I mean,
Yeah.
to me, that's insane.
Yeah. And New York laws are, so like how many of you have a spouse? Okay? You cannot touch your spouse's gun. Now, I kind of like that idea, but you can't touch it. Your concealed carry permit has your serial number on it. So like my family, we have multiple of the same make and model because we're all about parts and spare parts and whatever. So if he took the wrong Beretta one day, he would be breaking the law in New York, right? Even though it's the same, you know, make and model, just wrong serial number. Yeah.
So, in that regard, so you can't touch a family member's gun, right?
In New York.
If it's in New York, okay. I guess that also extends to if, like your friend.
No, even worse.
Even worse.
Yeah.
In jail.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so for instance, when I teach concealed carry, we talk about federal interstate protections. So anywhere where I'm legal, which I'm legal here in Nebraska, now if I want to go to Wisconsin, where I'm also legal, and I'm driving in my RV to go to a softball tournament, on the border of Illinois, I got to disarm, and I got to store my firearms in a secure place while I travel through Illinois on the way to Wisconsin, but Illinois cannot prevent me from having my firearms securely as I'm going through. That's federal protection of my Second Amendment rights. So when I talk about traveling to the East Coast, like say we're going to Maine. Maine is like the constitutional carry state, one of the safest in the nation. And say you get delayed in New York, right, overnight because of snow. I teach my students, don't get your luggage if you're transporting your firearm. The moment your hand touches the handle, law enforcement is literally waiting for you to pounce because it's illegal for you to have possession of a firearm in New York without all of that 5-year background check cards and everything else.
Now there's a process if you want to hand a firearm to your friend or your spouse or whatever. You can go through the legal transfer procedures and the permitting process and all that. It's just like this. This is what it would be just like. You're driving down the road, any two of you are in the same car. You decide, whoever's driving, decides that they're tired. You're going to pull over, switch seats, the passenger is going to drive for a while. Normal, we all do that on road trips, right? We take turns driving. But you can't just switch seats. You actually have to go to a car dealer and you have to fill out paperwork to transfer the ownership of that car to the passenger, then go to the courthouse and register the car in their name.
Oh, and pay your fees.
And pay the fees and any mandatory waiting periods before you can get back in the car and get back on the road. And then 4 hours down the road, when it's time to switch again, you've got to transfer it back.
Yeah.
That's
what New York
literally
is like.
What
But that's
the proposed
common sense gun law.
Yeah, that is how the proposed universal background check law would work if you were to lend a firearm to a friend. Now, if you're at the range and you're standing right there, it would not be a violation.
No, but in Oregon it is.
But in Oregon, it would be.
Their universal background check is you will not touch a gun unless you had a background check.
But the things that the federal government is wanting to do to require universal background checks, and they're so slick with their wording because they'll tell you that 80% of Americans support background checks. Well, some of us don't even support that, but I can understand why we have that law in place because we don't want people that aren't supposed to have firearms to have them, right? So the background check is there, and I'm not going to stand here and say it's a bad idea. But when you say that in these surveys or when you're asking the people on the street, they're thinking about that. They're not thinking about universal background check that is getting pushed that would literally make you have to go to a dealer and pay a fee to transfer the firearm so that your buddy could take your shotgun to the trap range while his is getting worked on at the gunsmith. Unless you're there with him, except in Oregon.
So the biggest thing is in the gun control debate, your number one thing to get informed about is the prosecution of firearm violations. Get smart on the sad state that is our prosecutorial system in the United States. When someone can get 6 months probation for providing a known felon gang member the firearm with a 100-round drum that is used to shoot people on the routine and then it kills Officer Orozco, gets 6 months in probation, tell me why you need another gun law. She would be alive had that woman not done that. So the firearm laws are not preventing crime, but if we held people accountable for the time that we say these violations matter, then maybe it would change. At least I would be a little bit more open to discussion because the compromise is always on our side. I don't see compromise on the other.
But let's
Maybe
be
we could
honest,
start with the president's son and light on a form and then threw the
And,
item in the trash.
right.
I'm just
I
saying,
know,
maybe
well, don't
that-
even get me started, because I work for the government in the sense I work for the Department of Defense, and I have had a clearance since I was 19, so I have had a very boring life, okay? Haven't got to do anything fun yet. And so the whole Hillary email thing on the server, it just, right. So once you get to a certain level of power and authority, the laws don't apply to you, they just apply to us. Well, let's reverse that.
Yeah. And I don't want to see hands go up, but there probably are going to be people in this room who own AR-15s or AR-15 style rifles, possibly AR-15 style pistols. If you own one of those, the chances are very high that you've got magazines that hold 30 rounds. And in the state of Nebraska right now, that's awesome. It's fine. Go have fun. Go hunt, go shoot, go whatever you're going to do that doesn't break laws, and that is totally cool. And when you bought those items, you did so legally. You didn't break any laws, and it's cool. We're all about that. There are some proposed laws that the White House and Congress want to put into effect that would make it so that if your AR-style pistol has a pistol brace, which is not a stock, because a stock would make it a rifle, but a brace does not make it a rifle. But they want to make it to where you can't have that brace, which only helps you shoot more safely and accurately. They don't want you to be accurate with your AR-style pistol, apparently. They don't want you to have magazines that hold more than an arbitrary number is 10 is what they're throwing around right now, 10 rounds. Although some states, like, is it New Jersey or New York, have lowered it to 7 because the 10 rounds were still too many and people were still committing murder. So let's make it to where we have to have flintlocks and see if that, flintlocks never killed anybody, ever, except for, we're a country now, so maybe they did. But here's the thing is, these laws want to take you as a law-abiding citizen, me as a law-abiding citizen, and they want to turn us into felons overnight, simply for owning a piece of property that yesterday we owned legally. And when we bought it legally. And we violated no laws. And we have committed no crimes with these items. But the state, or excuse me, the federal government, the Congress, and the White House want to say that simply owning this item makes me more dangerous today than it did yesterday. I'm not going to commit crimes with my firearms. Those of you that came in that have concealed carry permits, you noticed the sign on the door that says it's not allowed in here to be legal. I disarmed it before I came in because I am a law-abiding citizen. I'm the one, we've all seen that video, I think, floating around the internet. He's now Lieutenant Governor in North Carolina, Mark Robinson. He went to the, I don't even remember which city he lived in now, but he went to the city council meeting and spoke out against gun laws, and he said that they're only going to penalize the people that follow laws, they're only going to hurt the majority of the people. He said, who's that? He said, I'm the majority. If you pass these dumb assault weapons bans, he said, I'm going to give up mine because I'm a law-abiding citizen. But the criminals that are out there on the streets are not going to follow that law any more than they follow the other laws. So laws are only going to disarm the people that follow them. I have yet to see a politician come up with a plan to disarm criminals. They've only come up with plans to make more criminals, not fewer.
Maybe it's they don't want to.
That's because they don't want
That's not
to.
the ultimate goal in the long run.
Because if you become a felon, then they can go after your voting rights, and that way is how they control them.
Well, they want to give felons rights, though.
Yeah.
So it's not about the voting
Well,
rights.
But
Here's
you're
the
not
thing.
gonna have the right to vote, after you.
They'll
get
talk
busted
out
for
of
gun
two
law.
sides of their mouth.
Yep.
So here's,
After they restrict the gun from the law-abiding citizens, you have to ask, what do they want to do next?
right.
Why do they have
Something
to
they
take
get
it?
shot for.
It'd be like China where nobody can have a gun except the military.
How many of you at one time in your life had parents? Should be most of you. How many of you growing up as a child got told, do this because I said so, because I know more than you do, child. I know what's best for you as your parent. How many of you today as grown-ups still listen to your parents and get told what to do by any grown-up, any other human being on the planet? How many of you make your own decisions?
They ain't around no more.
The government wants to be your mom and your dad and tell you that they know what's best for you. As simple as that.
I had a mom and dad.
It's because they forget they work for us.
Well, that's a lot of it.
That's the biggest part of it.
That's a lot of it.
Consent by the governed.
I think that the biggest reason that this has happened is because, and okay, I'm going to take off my NFOA hat because I'm speaking as John right now. But across this state, I've had this conversation over the last several years with a few people about bump stocks got banned. Okay, I don't care. I don't have one. I think they're dumb. Now they want to ban scary black rifles. I don't care. I don't like them anyway. Who cares if they ban them? I've got a shotgun. You know, I go out and I hunt turkeys, or I go out and I hunt quail and pheasant. That's what I do. That's all I care about. I shoot deer with a bolt action rifle. They're not after those. And we've got a ton of people who have, over the years, said, it'll never happen. This is Nebraska. They'll never come and take guns away in Nebraska. It would never go here. You guys remember in 2018 what happened in Virginia? Because Virginia was a very red state and their voters said it'll never happen here. And they did not go and vote. And they lost their Republican seats in their state government. And they became a blue state overnight. And they lost a whole bunch of their liberties and rights as gun owners when the new session started, because they had laws ready to go and their Democrat governor signed them. And all of a sudden Virginia is saying, how did this happen? We're a good gun state. But they didn't get off their butts and go vote because they didn't think they needed to. I am not willing to let my state go the way of Virginia. It's time, and people are noticing that. People are getting off their butts. And you can stay on your butt, make a phone call, send an email from your phone. You don't even have to get off the couch. I'm the laziest person in this room, I promise. And it doesn't take long. I mean, is anybody in the room not able to make a phone call or send an email? Or heaven forbid, you want real results? Write a letter out, put a stamp on it, drop it in the mail, make somebody open an envelope and read a letter, or type it and sign it by hand. Because if I wrote it, they wouldn't be able to read it. So I'll type mine and sign mine. But the thing is that it doesn't take anybody to do miracles, right? All we need is a whole bunch of people willing to do one thing. But, you know, you don't have to be the whole tidal wave. Just be one drop of water in it. But we get enough drops of water together, and look what's sweeping across our state. And that's why we're here. I have this conversation with people all the time. I say, hey, I got elected to the board. Now I'm a board member for Nebraska Firearms Owners Association. The what? What's that? Well, we're the association. We're the group for gun owners in Nebraska. Oh, yeah, I didn't even know there was one. Some of you didn't really know there was one until recently. That's why we're here. We're not asking you to send us money, although we are asking that if you want to, please do so. Because we don't keep any of that. Again, Trish and I, the only money that we get paid is from the membership dues. Any donations go into a separate account. And we didn't introduce him, but our treasurer is here as well. We've got Sheldon Otto here,
and then we
representing Boyd County.
And then we have Byron, who's our forum moderator.
Polk County, near Spencer.
Appreciate them coming out.
I will say, I agree with what John said there. I own a hunting business, so I always get a lot of different types of people come in from all over the United States and come out and hunt my place. And I've had guys say, well, you just need hunting rifles, like the bolt action, and like these people enjoy hunting, but they're willing to give up rights because they don't like the other gun. And I'm like, well, as soon as they take one gun away, they could take yours away too, because maybe they don't like a 30-06 anymore because it kills too well.
2 years ago,
maybe
those
like
were on the table.
7mm.
2 years ago, Senator McCoster's bill would have significantly restricted all hunting shotguns and rifles.
Yeah, any semi-auto, long gun or handgun would
right?
have been restricted.
And that was when, through grassroots, we had the largest turnout of any hearing in state history. Over 500 people. We filled up the Unicamel. We had buses busing people in. It was great. It was amazing. And because of that, we don't have a red flag bill again. You see how there's hardly any bad bills? There's just a couple ones that we're trying. They know we're watching now, and they know you want 500 people to show up. How about 1,000? How about 2,000?
One of these was the one that we were opposed to, or that we were against up here. Same senator, same bill, minus the restrictions on the long guns. He took that out and put the same bill through and tried it without it. Still didn't, so far hasn't gotten anywhere.
We killed it.
But
So.